Grandma's Revenge. Okay, so disclaimer on mobile. Writing in a rush. The story was relayed to me by grandparents, so it may be embellished. Yada yada, let's get to the story. I immediately have to write this down because it is the most amazing thing I have ever heard. I was visiting my grandma and grandpa to celebrate a bunch of summer birthdays together, but when I pulled up to their house, the plot to the right was completely empty. As in no stones, no base, no debris, just slightly overgrown grass. Grass, where there used to be a house. When the hellos were said and the party started, I absolutely had to know what happened. So I went to ask my grandparents, and goodness gracious, I was not expecting the roller coaster of a story they told me. A couple of years ago, my grandparents had some very unpleasant neighbors. Loud at all hours, trash in the yard, arguing with other people on the street. Just absolute nuisances. It was a husband and wife, and their adult son who would come and go irregularly. The wife would get into arguments with anyone about anything, and the husband would physically intimidate the people who spoke up for themselves. They weren't sure what exactly was the deal with the son, but it couldn't have been anything good as it was well known he had been in the county jail more than a few times. The house apparently reflected the tenants, as it looked awful. It was sagging and dilapidated, loose beams and peeling paint. But nothing was ever done about it due to the guy who rented out the place being a slumlord. We'll get to him later. Closing parenthesis. It all came to a breaking point one night when my grandparents returned home to find their back door smashed in and some of my grandpa's guitars missing. Now grandpa loves his music and has been singing and playing his whole life. So it's safe to say those guitars are not only very memorable to him, but damn expensive too. They of course went to the police, and after some digging they found that the guitars had been sold at a pawn shop or someplace by the son. They couldn't get the guitars back unfortunately, but I believe my grandparents were fairly compensated since the guitars were insured till guitars have insurance. Given how expensive the guitars were, the theft was absolutely a felony and the son once again ended up in jail. After that, the neighbors would harass my grandparents through the fence or on their porch, meaning it was difficult for them to even sit outside. They would call them foul names, throw trash over the fence, and the husband would still try to get physical. Now while my grandpa is a very chill and mellow guy, my grandma will take shit from noon, especially not jerks like these. So what did she do? She got the house condemned. It was easy for her to do, really. She called the local authorities, general attorney, property manager, I don't know, and they came and did an inspection. Though it was clear by the outside of the house that it hadn't been properly maintained for a long time. One call led to more calls, and the property was deemed unfit to live in, which forced the rude neighbors to move out. I'm not sure what happened to them or where they went, but supposedly they were put up in a nearby hotel by the slumlord until the house could be fixed. Ooh, foreshadowing. Now enter the slumlord. Of course his tenants told him who had reported the house, so of course he's upset with my grandparents. Rather than fix the house though, he gets aggressive the first day he's there, yelling at my grandparents about how they're idiots for reporting him and how they've cost him a bunch of money and he's gonna sue them and on and on. It gets to the point where the across the street neighbors called the local police to come defuse the situation, which they do. A few weeks pass, and my grandma hasn't seen the slumlord or anyone around to fix the house. Not being one to let things go easily, grandma starts making frequent calls to a bunch of services, reporting the house and its lack of progress. Each time, the slumlord's truck would appear for a day, and then leave without changing a thing. Grandpa said he would block in their driveway, but since they stay home most of the time, it wasn't a major issue. Grandma disagreed. Finally, my grandma had complained enough that officials came out and condemned the house for demolition. This had two major effects. First, the rude neighbors were now practically homeless, since as soon as they and the slumlord ran out of money to pay for the hotel, they'd be stranded. Second, the slumlord still had to pay a shitload of fines for the state of the house. The rest is more his fault than my grandma's actions, but he would refuse to pay and refuse to show up in court, leading to a warrant being put out for his arrest. A few months ago, the demolition teams came and tore down the place, leaving the lot perfectly barren. They even removed the driveway, so now it just looks like an extension of the side yard. My grandparents were not sure of the final state of the neighbors and slumlord, but my grandma looked very pleased with herself as she finished her story. I love her so much.